So this is the OnCrawl and We Are Search webinar tackling SEO challenges in 2021. And we're here with Jenny Halasz, with Lukasz, Zelezny, Naguib, Toihiri, and myself, Rebecca Bobel from OnCrawl. And we'll get started in just a second. So good morning again, good afternoon, good evening. I think we've got people in all of the time zones. And we wanted to get together to present this webinar to you because we've noticed how search and SEO tactics have changed in the past couple of years. I wanted to talk about the new ways of handling some of those that we've seen be very successful in the past couple of months and going forward. So let's get started. So today we have a panel of great SEOs with us. I'm Rebecca Bobel. I'm the content manager at OnCrawl. Lukasz Zelezny is here. He's an SEO consultant. You've probably encountered him around. Lukasz, can you say a word or two about what you do?
Yeah, so I run SEO.London. It's my one-man band consultancy, and I'm helping brands around the Europe and right now also in Asia and South America to improve organic performance. That's my main focus. Working with the in-house teams very often to help them finding the right direction.
Great. That sounds good. We also have Jenny Halasz, who is the president and founder of JLH Marketing Incorporated and an international speaker. Jenny, can you say a few words?
It's great to have you. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Rebecca. I, just like Lukasz, am a one-woman band, and I provide consulting to primarily mid-sized to enterprise companies, and I also do a lot of work with agencies.
Great, thanks. And Naguib Toihiri is the global SEO lead and head of SEO at Artefact, an agency. So we've got a different perspective there. Naguib, can you say a word about that, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the intro, Rebecca. So I'm leading actually the digital and data marketing department at Artefact MENA. So Artefact is a data consulting firm based globally in about 14 countries, headquartered in Paris. So we basically leverage data to help solving business problems.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And from my perspective, if you're not familiar with OnCrawl, we are an enterprise SEO platform that brings together technical SEO, data science, and machine learning. So we have different modules that form this platform: an SEO crawler, Data Cube, which is connections to different SEO tools, a log analyzer, and OnCrawl Labs, providing machine learning technology and information. We have 1,000+ companies using our platform for their SEO, and that ranges from standard SaaS companies with their websites to e-commerce sites of all sizes, multinational brands with a portfolio of hundreds of localized sites. We're offering a free trial, so feel free to head over to www.oncrawl.com. And with that, here's what we're going to cover today: the challenges of search that we're facing in 2021, the 4 strategies that we see most often, and then a panel discussion with the group here. And we'll finish up with a Q&A if we have enough time. So if you have questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat box. So search in 2020 is a lot of more ranking factors, more algorithm complexity, more SERP features, more queries, more websites, more big websites, and more competitors. And basically, if we had to sum all of this up, more what? More data. And this hasn't been a light switch where things switched over when we hit January 1st. It's been something that's been accumulating over the past several years, and I think we've reached a tipping point where some of the traditional SEO strategies that we use to analyze information don't scale to the amount of data that we have to deal with. We see the same thing with Google, but we see it occurring a little bit earlier, where they've moved from rule-based algorithms that were individually scripted and easy to follow to machine learning and more complex algorithms. And an early example of that would be, say, RankBrain in 2015, which is used to better understand the queries that Google has never seen before. So this doesn't have to be a problem. There are 4 strategies that we've seen be extremely successful, and I'll lay them out for you now. And then in the second part of the webinar, we'll talk about how concretely the SEOs like the group we have here today can appropriate and adapt these strategies based on their own experiences. So the first strategy is to take advantage of accessible new tools. Today's tools are made to process data for you. So rather than trying to struggle through it yourself, use those tools. One of the greatest examples is Data Studio, particularly for SEO, because it is free. It's connected through Google to lots of SEO related information, and it's connected to SEO platforms. So you bring data from Google Analytics, Google Search Console, tools like SEMrush, or even OnCrawl, and information from other sources through, for example, Sheets, or even big query platforms into Data Studio. It's fairly intuitive interface. You process it and you can see easily what new insights are. And it's also increasingly adopted by people, which means that there are help, tutorials, templates out there. For example, we have things here from OnCrawl, from Aleda Solis, from Christina Azarenko to help with what you are trying to do in Data Studio. But tools aren't just software and applications, though there are a ton of those like SparkToro or InLinks that have appeared recently on the scene, or even Data IQ. Tools also include plugins. And since I just mentioned Data IQ, which is a data science platform, that's a great example. It has an OnCrawl plugin, which means that all of your SEO data is then available for machine learning plugins, collaborative processes, and other ways of handling that data. In addition to plugins, there are also APIs, code, scripts, and even features. So that can be anything from evolutions in Chrome DevTools to the expansion of existing APIs like OnCrawl, which now includes different exports for large amounts of data so that you can use that to build processes using the information that a crawler has already collected about your website. The second strategy is to choose solutions for big sites and big volumes of data. So we're all used to using spreadsheets. And even when working with a website with barely, say, 2,000 pages, I've personally run into problems when handling historical or particularly keyword data. Not only do things get slow, but you end up with errors because there are limits like 1 million rows in Excel or 5 million cells in Google Sheets. Or if you're using it to collect data from the internet with functions like import XML, you might be better off using Python or even a crawler to collect that information since you're only limited to 50 functions like that. So this means you might need bigger data algorithms. So if you're using a crawler, make sure that it's built on algorithms meant to process large numbers of pages for big sites like OnCrawl's is. So we're just one example of a tool that won't slow down because you have, say, 145 million JavaScript pages to crawl and billions upon billions of internal links to analyze. So we do crawls like that fairly frequently on an infrastructure that's already built to be able to scale for that type of volume without affecting performance for anyone. If you are using big volumes and you do have a big site, audits on that scale produce even more data. And so this past year has seen improvements with BigQuery integration in OnCrawl, Parquet exports to improve data integrity and transfer speed, and multiple types of connections for, say, cloud storage, whether that's Google Cloud Storage, Amazon S3 buckets. So just know that that type of solution is out there even for SEO if you need it. The third strategy is to gain a good understanding of site structure and purpose. So the structure of a site determines how it behaves and how users and search engine bots interact with it. I think I mentioned JavaScript a moment ago in citing a large site that you might have. And rendering with JavaScript is going to continue to be a major question because standards and browsers and even Google evolve with how they regard to how they handle JavaScript. And one of the best ways of finding out how this can impact your site is to look at a crawl with and without JavaScript so that will easily reveal where rendering issues actually do affect indexing. Since we're not just talking about technology, we're also talking about how a site is built. So how the architecture using links within the site create a structure. These are major signals of page importance for Google. So in 2020, OnCrawl revised InRank, which is our on-site PageRank indicator. These are based on new information from Google and also from observed behavior, which help make in-rank increasingly accurate so you can see better how page influence and importance is distributed across your site. That's one of the most effective things that you can do to improve your site for search. And when you're analyzing something like in-rank, particularly on large sites, you want to see the functional parts of your site, not individual URLs. And this is where segmentation, or how you break down that site, comes in. In OnCrawl, you can do that based on any metric: rate of conversion rate, rank, page speed, crawl budget, page indexability, or even something really abstract in terms of on-site analysis. Here, this is page type, like key pages, documentation, support pages, client cases. And this makes it extremely clear when you find situations like localized landing pages that aren't ranking well. You can see that you can clearly see that they are also the section of your site that perhaps is the slowest. Finally, when we're talking about site purpose, if you're doing SEO professionally, it's because there's a business purpose to the sites you're working on. So bring that business data into your audits. So analyze how SEO indicators interact or correspond or even correlate with that data, whatever it is, whether it's conversions, profit margins, revenue. And this is really easy to do in something like OnCrawl. You can either import external data like that to analyze within the platform, or you can use our connections to data visualization platforms and business intelligence solutions to take that SEO audit data to where your business information lives and analyze it there. Finally, the fourth strategy is to test out experimental ideas and SEO programming. This does not mean that you need to be a programmer. It means that there are new ideas out there and they do circulate. These are just some examples from SEO Twitter of people in the past 6 months who have built mini tools to answer questions they themselves were asking and then shared those tools. So if you're attentive to those trends, you have access to that information and you know what's going on out there. Since I'm talking about programming and programmers, I'd like to take a moment to mention Hamlet Batista, who we lost last week. He had a huge impact on the SEO community in general and left an important legacy behind. If you're interested, please go over and check out SEOpythonistas.com, which is run by Charlie Warnier, to group together all of his contributions and add to it with the contributions of the SEO community, particularly in SEO programming and Python areas. So when talking about new ideas, sharing, and community, those are values that at OnCrawl, and this is one of the reasons why I enjoy working with OnCrawl, at OnCrawl we think are extremely important. And so looking at our R&D this past year or so, we realized that we're doing a lot of work in automation, SEO prediction, advanced analyses, even NPL and text generation. And while these things are far from being ready for a mass market tool, they're still at a stage where people can profit from them. And so as in OnCrawl Labs, we decided to offer documented step-by-step pre-coded processes for these type of machine learning projects so that you can adapt them for your specific use case. So the bottom line here is that you don't have to be an expert in research and development. You don't have to be an expert in Python and machine learning. And you don't have to be creating or waiting for viable software in order to profit from the solutions that are already out there. I'd like to leave you with this quote: "I have no doubt that data science will become a strong asset for every digital marketer." Why? Because this type of technology makes it possible to make reliable decisions based on actual data. And that is the competitive advantage that I think we're all looking for. So with that, I'd like to say hello to the group of SEOs today. I'm really excited to chat with Lukasz, Jenny, and Naguib. So to open this discussion and get an idea, we saw that you're each coming from very different positions. I'd like to ask what it is that you're working on at the moment that you find extremely interesting. Would you like to start, Jenny?
Sure, that'd be fine. Thanks, Rebecca, for that great intro, and especially for the shout out to Hamlet. We all really loved him, and he's a great loss. what am I working on at the moment? So many things. One of the things that I work on pretty consistently that I really enjoy is taking advantage of OnCrawl's in rank. And not to sound like an ad here, I am an ambassador. I do absolutely love the tool, but I've really been digging into the opportunity to use in rank in more non-conventional ways, looking at I'm actually using click-through rate from search to show me where I have pages that need a little more work, and using that click-through rate to take the pages that are getting the highest click-through rate, and then we're creating internal links within those pages to some of the pages with the lower click-through rates to try to figure out what's going on. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
So it sounds like you're really using SERP interaction to boost the pages and the structure of the sites that you're working on.
Very much so. Thanks for putting it eloquently.
What are you working on at the moment, Naguib?
Thank you, Rebecca, for the intro. I will obviously join Jenny on what she said, and I think like 2020 was actually obviously like a very tough year, but realize a lot of people actually in the digital marketing like realize the importance of SEO, because we've seen a lot of obviously like a budget cut, and I'm talking on behalf of as an agency side. So we've seen a lot of clients obviously taking the decision to cut off like some budget for a certain time, given the situation, especially on specific industries, but they realize that there are other channels as well that obviously like more like long-term and can be sustained without major investment, I would say. So they realize that there are things that are very important, and people don't really want to hear about like algorithm changes or like technicalities or like all those jargon in SEO or ranking. They really want to hear about business and money. And this is what basically what the companies went back to. And I think, obviously, I mean, OnCrawl was very helpful in that time with all the support that you have been given, but it's really linking the business problem with our SEO. So like, what is the business value? There are three things, very practical, that actually have done now more in an ongoing basis since 2020, is bring the business value to the SEO. Three things is first, one of the things that Jenny has mentioned is about like, what is basically the percentage of pages that are ranking in the first page but have a low CTR. I need to understand that because I want to increase the engagement of my pages. The second thing is the percentage of product pages, I'm talking as an e-commerce website, product pages that are ranking in the first page but not generating revenue. And I've done those audits with a lot of e-commerce, and they realize that, okay, you see guys, this is kind of like if you go in the shop, if you're not in lockdown, you go to a shop, there is a lot of products, but none of them are basically like sold. And they kind of like realize that, yeah, actually SEO became my online shop because I can't move anymore. I'm stuck. So this is even becoming more important. And the last thing is, I would say is basically like what is the average position of pages that generate revenue? So are the pages that actually generate revenue, do they have the highest ranking that I can expect? And this is all about, as you said at the very beginning, linking the data dots between Google Search Console, Google Analytics, and even other tools like Google AdWords. You need to bring all those data together to make business decisions.
Right. So for you, the major axis of activity at the moment is really linking that business data to SEO performance.
Exactly.
And Lukasz, what are you working on at the moment? I think you're muted.
Sorry.
It has to happen at least once every webinar.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for intro. I just wanted to say that I have more and more customer from adult industry, and kind of, I think like this is a perfect niche because lots of SEO don't want to take these topics. Very educational, but also very competitive. And if we will go more into details, I think what I am working on right now, I'm trying to get ready for May 2021. So from one side, I'm trying to be ready with a page speed, and I'm doing lots of experiments. I have a couple of websites that I'm doing different experiments, 2-3 o'clock at night, and I'm trying to figure out how Lighthouse will behave, how Google PSI will behave, doing some little tweaks like moving JavaScript request on the top, on the bottom of the to the header, to the footer. And the second thing, which is making me quite excited, is partially what you said, that during the strategies that you was going through. So there is plenty of businesses that are getting a lot of traffic because of the inventory. It can be like Gumtree, Crunchbase, Zoopla, Rightmove, Zalando, whatever, Amazon. They are not doing SEO per se the way how SaaS companies needs to do. They are getting traffic because of the inventory. More properties you have, more traffic you have. So I'm trying always to discover if the business I'm working with is able to get into, at least to some point, into this kind of area, which could really scale up. I was working with one business which recently entered into nutrition. So, fantastic impact on traffic, organic traffic, when you have so many products. But yeah, like, plenty of different things. And I think after 20 years of being in SEO, I think every year is more exciting.
I think that's definitely true. One of the things I definitely appreciate about SEO is that it changes. It's not a static field. So I think that's actually a really great lead into the first question that we wanted to ask. Are there new tools or features or other SEO aids that you've been testing recently? I know, Lukasz, you just mentioned that you were working with different techniques to optimize things for the core web vitals, and you mentioned Lighthouse. Are there other tools in that area that you might be using?
If it's about new tools and the page speed, I am a big fan of Pingdom. I have right now quite high level of Pingdom, where I'm. This is a natural process of onboarding my customers. I'm always. Oh, sorry. I knew that it was coming. So this is like a natural process of onboarding customer, taking customer and taking her website into Pingdom, into Little Warden. So I have like a pretty nice view about these little bits and bobs that are out there. Not only SEO per se, but that someone can edit robot.txt file, and I know I'm the first one who know about that. Someone will edit H1 of the homepage. I'm the first one who knows about that. So I think that clients really appreciate when we know how nicely the website can be controlled and tracked. So Pingdom, Google PSI, Web Dev, a bit of GTmetrix still. But aside of these tools, I just wanted to mention entities, Inlinks and WordLift. I'm a big fan of entities. This is the year of entities. Forget about keywords. This is the entities. So Inlinks and WordLift, and to give you a bit of traction how big fan I am, I'm using them both on some websites together. More schemas always better. I'm a schema maniac. So yeah, that's me.
I think we're all headed in that direction. At least I am.
I've faced a lot of contraction of my business over the last year. I'm down significantly, unfortunately, but it has given me some time to play with some things like looking to see how much impact the core web vitals might have on some of my existing clients. That's a really interesting thing because for anybody who's not aware, that goes live in May, and Core Web Vitals becomes a set of new ranking factors. Certainly have seen improvements to sites from getting those things fixed now, but they'll really hit in May, according to Google. The other thing I've been playing with a lot is Data Studio. the new technologies and the new capabilities within that tool are really impressive and exciting. If you're not already signed up for their monthly newsletter, you should, because Google sends out a newsletter every month that says, here's what's new with Data Studio, and there's always something fun and new to play with. And then the other thing that I really haven't delved into yet, but I'm interested if you guys have, is the new Google Analytics GA4 that I haven't really had a chance to dig into yet, but I'm curious if you guys have.
Yeah, I've started looking at it. It's actually really interesting because it provides a lot of the same metrics, but instead of counting, for example, sessions or page hits, we're looking at users. So depending on how they define a user and what you connect to it, so you can trace users further into your process beyond just action with your website. So I think that has a lot of potential to help with, as Naguib was saying, tying in data business elements into your SEO, because you can look at how users behave beyond just your website. And you can look at them as clients, you can look at them as users of a tool if you provide a tool, or clients who purchase things, who return to purchase things if you have an e-commerce website. And there's so much machine learning built into that that you can really look deep into some of the behavioral patterns on your website. Is that something you've started looking at, Naguib, with the GA4?
Yeah, it's a good transition, Rebecca. So when it comes to tools, I remember like 10 years ago when I started the SEO, not 20 years ago as Lukasz, because I was too young for that. But the thing is, I remember every year I was doing this like yearly benchmark. Okay, what are the latest tools? What are the latest features? Okay, SEMrush, Ahrefs, just to mention a few of them, Majestic, blah, blah, blah. And I think this time is gone. I think this time is behind us, because now we have access to technology that helps us building the solution for our problems. And what is becoming very interesting now is actually the screenshot that you have shared with the nice people that I know, most of them like Ayman, etc. actually share, and obviously Hamlet was the best on that. Like that was where he made the difference. He was one of the few actually who started to share like the actual code that we could use to do Python. And I remember a few months ago when we did this panel discussion together, the first thing that I said when you asked me the question, like, what would you advise to start Python and SEO? I said, first of all, follow Hamlet. And my king was there as well. So, and I choose Hamlet. But basically, I think this is now time for us to build our solution. So two things that I found interesting here, and that's actually the reason why I joined Artefact, because we're proud to have like 30% of our colleagues are actually data scientists. And the thing is, there are two things that I found very, very interesting. The first one is obviously the automation, how machine learning can help us automate tasks. The most basic things, but I think this is today what we should do, especially at large scale website, is like automating meta description. So now we can basically automate meta description, like basically based on the algorithm and using NLP to basically like summarize text and just starting from the URL. So it's not about like feeding with content. It's actually the URL will capture the whole content and generate a meta description with multiple algorithm and iteration that you can pick the best one. So this is for automation. The second thing is for innovation. And I think the big challenge for SEO now, and obviously Ren Friskin like shared that a few years ago already, is the on-SERP SEO, the fact that people don't go anymore visit websites. So we need to become that answer. Now, like the vast majority of searches don't lead to traffic, they lead to answers. And where machine learning can help us is actually to validate this content. But I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to discuss that. But in a nutshell, we have now the ability to emulate basically Google algorithm, like at least like the birth part of Google, meaning that we don't need to have any assumption about, oh, my content is good enough to be picked by Google as an answer. We can use the machine to validate content before we publish. So that's actually, I think those two things, automation of content at scale. And tomorrow, all the journal and all the news basically will be automated. We want or we don't want, it will be the case for basic news, and it's already the case for major websites. And the second thing is to validate, work with machine to validate our human work.
So I think I hear two things really coming out of there. One, instead of looking at tools and seeing how they can help you, start with your problem and develop the tools that you need to answer them. And then on the other hand, using the tools that are available to evaluate your content the way Google does. And I think that ties in a lot with what Lukasz was just saying about schema. So that you don't only have the NLP, BERT, and GPT-3 or 2, whatever you're using at the moment, to analyze that, but you can also use other supports to indicate to Google and to your own tools what your content is about and whether or not it's appropriate, such as schema markup, and to get really those entities reinforced on your pages.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of sort of emulating the Google SERP experience and also tracking those featured snippets and the non-click answers, I do want to give a shout out to RankSense, which was the tool that Hamlet developed. If you haven't tested out that tool yet, you really need to. It's incredible in terms of its capabilities to understand what's going on in the SERP and give you some feedback about that.
So that sounds like quite a lot of tools. But they all sort of head into the same idea of analyzing things that we might have done previously by hand, or collected somewhat manually, that now we're moving towards being able to do that in an automated fashion. Do you have an example of a situation where you chose to abandon sort of a manual collection or analysis? What did you do instead?
All the time. When I start to do something manually and I realize that it's stupid to try to do it that way. I'm not a programmer. And I have not been one of those SEOs that has been strong enough and to delve into Python, even using some of these great workbooks that have been given for free. They still scare me. So
some of them are pretty scary. So I think that's a valid position.
So when I am doing something manually and I realize that it's stupid to do it manually, I usually look to somebody who has already done it or a tool that has already done it. And I pony up the cash and I do it that way.
So is that usually profitable for you to then say, yeah, I should pay for this?
Well, I mean, it is what it is, right? I have to do an analysis of whether it's cheaper of whether it's more profitable to buy the tool and let it do the job for me, or spend my hours that I could be spending in billable time to try and rebuild something that I know is already out there. So,
yeah,
for me, it's not particularly profitable not to just use the tools that are available, but for a lot of people, I think that they could, create a quick Python workbook and have it done for them. So
is that something you found, Naguib? Because I know on an agency level that scales differently than if you're an individual person working on a portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. So there are typical tasks that we do. So as I told you, I mentioned you when it comes to meta description. So I was giving that as an example when you need to do that at scale for huge websites in 12 languages. So we need to get an element of automation. Otherwise, you're not going to be able. And the idea is not to, there are core pages that you need to do manually because they are the main landing pages, but you're not going to go through a list of 10,000 pages one by one to write those on-page elements. What we used to do as Excel using templates, now machine learning can do it in a better way. That's one thing, meta description. The other thing that I found very interesting is actually one of the biggest challenges when it comes to SEO is site migration, is how we map out basically the old URLs to the new URLs. And that's a very time-consuming task because you need to make sure that the information architecture of the website are similar and how you match that. And again, basically using the URL of the origin and the URL of the destination, you can use algorithm that will give you a matching of the best URL to be redirected to. So I think those type of tasks can now be obviously be automated, and that's again, the more challenges we face, the more solution we can identify using those new technologies. So and the thing is, like, at the end of the day, like most of the tools that are available in the market, it will take them time to build like solution at enterprise level. So we need to kind of like be more proactive, and there is thousands of solution online. Obviously, you mentioned Hamlet. He's one. I can mention as well Jean-Christophe Chouinard, who is doing a great job as well, sharing a lot of interesting things. So yeah, big shout out to those people who help the community in general.
I think a lot of you have already mentioned inlinks as something that's extremely useful to work on. What are some of the improvements that you can gain when you work on site structure, site information structure, and internal linking? Is that something you want to take, Lukasz?
Yeah, sure. I'm a big fan of inlinks. First of all, I just wanted to mention a bit what Jenny said, like, because we are very often a one-man band, we need to use this kind of solution just to save time. And it doesn't matter that you are a consultant and you mostly are talking to people, but there is always this part of the job when you need to deliver something, when you need to prepare something. And this kind of solution, like for example inlinks, can really bring a relief on the pain of like, how can I do this and scale up. So the way how I'm measuring the success of inlinks, it is number of featured snippets, number of times websites started appearing in people also asked, decrease on the bounce rate, increase on the time on the page, and pages per sessions. So I have a hard metrics that I can easily understand and present to the customers. And also on the second hand, there is this non-directly measurable aspects which are making websites stronger and stronger. I have right now a quite old website, this kind of old website that never been done, the SEO was never done, but the website is running since 2003. When you're going back to the web archive, you see that first version was on Flash. And you know that there is a brilliant situation because there is so much authority to unlock, and it will start blooming, like as if I magic. So so this is pretty much how I am measuring this. And if we're talking about inlinks, I just need to say this. I just heard recently from Dixon that I'm one of the highest subscribed accounts. So you can see, only like 3 or 4 accounts are higher than me. So I'm like really, really into the inlinks these days.
Well, as much as Lukasz is into inlinks, which is a fantastic tool, I love it as well. I am totally a sucker for OnCrawl. So I use the InRank to look at how the pages are linking together. And I did a whole session on ways that you can gain benefit from working on your internal links last year for Brighton. But that being said, some of the things that I've been able to do with the InRank tool and Majestic, which is my link tool of choice, although Ahrefs is great too, I have been able to identify where there is like a lot of value pointing into the site. One example is I found a site that had written a white paper and done some really significant PR outreach on that white paper. And the links were pointing into the PDF of the white paper. And by changing where that link went to, by using a server-side redirect to go from the PDF to an HTML page, and then making sure that that HTML page had good links to other areas of the site, particularly like the marketing pages and the sales pages that were associated with that solution. We saw a significant increase in both rank and traffic, but also in time on site and number of pages viewed. So lots of really, really great improvements there just by identifying something and then figuring out how to spread that value across the site to other areas.
When you talk about then driving both value and traffic to marketing and sales oriented pages, do you know if they were able, this particular client was able to then gather more leads or prospects from that particular optimization?
Yeah, without a doubt. So, I mean, initially the white paper just went to a PDF. That was an easy, just go to the PDF, and then it's essentially an orphan page because there's no links back into the site. There's no header or that sort of thing. So by redirecting it to an HTML page and using an email capture to look at the PDF, and then also redirecting, or not redirecting, that's not the right word, linking to the actual solutions that were addressed in the PDF, all of those made a huge difference. I forget what the number was, but it was significant, the number of conversions we were able to capture from just making those changes.
That sounds like it's sort of along the same lines as what Naguib was saying, but coming at it from the other direction. So you're tying sort of SEO improvements into the business or marketing advantage that you can gain from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what Naguib was talking about is super important as well, that just more of the branding and the positioning of the site in those non-click search results can be huge. It's just it can be a little harder to measure, although certainly you should see an uptick in traffic, particularly direct traffic, is associated with that. But always good things to keep an eye on and make sure that you're optimizing to your absolute best opportunity. And I get a shout out to Lukasz too. I mean, the schema, just schemaing everything so that it shows up in those results is huge as well.
One of the things that we've seen in different verticals is that some don't particularly have a lot of schema usage, so that if you are making certain information and certain entities machine readable on your site, it gives you an automatic advantage at the moment over other sites that are on those SERPs. We're going to try to get in.
There's definitely a first mover advantage there.
We're going to try to get in one last question here. What do you think it would take to make more data science techniques accessible to a broader population of SEOs? Do you have a take on that, Naguib?
Yeah, so actually that's the first thing I did when I joined Artefact, because we are like a data consulting firm. The first thing they actually managed to do like a subscription for all the employees on the data camp. So when I onboarded, basically we had to put our hands dirty in like data camp training and introduction to Python. So I think we need to understand, we don't need necessarily, I'm not a coder, I'm not a developer, I'm a marketer. So the thing is, but the problem, if we don't understand what are the abilities or what the capabilities of using machine learning, it's hard for us to connect basically the dot between the problem that we need to solve and the actual potential of solving using those solutions. So that's the very first thing that we did, like data camp, Python introduction. But then you realize that there is so many other, so many directions that you can take when it comes to Python. There is so many things, and that's where actually I found out the five pages guide of Jean-Christophe Chouinard, which actually talk about like 5 guides on how you can dive into SEO and Python, and this is where it's becoming interesting, the actual usage. So you can see at scale, for example, how many pages are indexed from your competitors using like some basic code of Python, those type of things. So don't be scared. That's the first thing. Try to like go beyond the actual hard and the fear of seeing like a code black and white. And the second thing is just try to engage with people like data scientists. And I think they will be keen as well to hear your challenges and they have so many ways to solve your problems that you can unleash your potential. That's all I can say. Don't be scared and speak to them.
Lukasz, do you think that you would have a different point of view, or is there another technique that would help make data science more accessible, even outside of programming?
Yeah, I think there is lots of fantastic way to self-educate. So I would partially, Naguib, what you said. This is the way. So I was studying statistics to some point. I'm way far away to call myself a mathematician, because I'm not. But I know the standard deviation. I know this Pearson correlation, and after many years now I'm like, this is really helpful. So for example, I'll give you one example. I'm just checking if the Google Analytics is collecting data correct way, taking data set of monthly traffic from Google Analytics, 16 months, versus monthly traffic from Search Console, and then aggregated into months. And then when I have these two sets, I'm just measuring correlation. If correlation is close to 1, then I know that both data sets are fluctuating the same way, and it's very correlated, so I can trust Google Analytics, because cookie consent, for example, is not affecting the way how the Google Analytics is collecting data. But obviously, it's like not a rocket science. Every time I hear it's not a rocket science, I see 2 rocket science engineers who are saying like, dude, this is not an SEO. This is just... So it's not a rocket science. And, I don't remember, it's brilliant.org, something like that. They advertising this everywhere. Brilliant.org. It's .org. Let me see if I remember correctly. Yeah, learn to think. Brilliant.org. Learn to think. And this is it's established to give people better understanding of math. So if anyone here is about, to try to get a better skills about numbers, trying to think more like, with this kind of math regime, I think I would start from brilliant.org or YouTube. There is lots of that you can learn. Don't afraid Excel. Excel is your friend, and unfortunately, there is the other side of this coin. Lots of people who I met during my career, especially the young people who are joining very often, when you was asking question like how you're calculating the share of the traffic or a percentage, they were saying like, I'm going to the website how to calculate percent.com, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, there must be a bit of this kind of number focus, especially now when everyone is using calculators. And actually the scientists said that overall skills about calculating numbers is a little decreasing over years, because we are using too much calculators for simple math. Back in the day, generation of my grandfather or great-grandfather had to calculate this on the pen and paper, with the pen and paper, and their skills been even higher a bit about the simple math. So yeah, as overall, I will just share with our lovely attendees this brilliant.org, and you may discover this. Maybe that will be helpful. It's completely non-SEO thing. It's more about mathematics.
I would absolutely second that, Lukasz. I know I've gotten into different machine learning platforms recently and found that they're extremely easy to use, at least in terms of the interface. So if you talk about, like I mentioned Data IQ earlier, it's a drag and drop interface. It feels like you're using an extension on a spreadsheet. It's very, very intuitive. But in order to understand what you're doing, what I've noticed that I'm lacking is some of the advanced math and statistics.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, you can start anywhere. I did start with a machine learning course from Google. Google has a little like intro to machine learning, which is really helpful just in terms of understanding what it is that we're doing here. But I have to say, don't get down on yourself and don't get frustrated if you're one of the people watching who didn't do any of this during this last year. I am right there with you. I have 2 children. I've been trying to homeschool and run a business and support a family, and that does not leave time for learning Python. So just know that there are others out there like you, and that we can all get started one step at a time.
I think that's a great message to end on. We have a little bit of time for a Q&A, and we have a few questions that have come in. We had earlier in the discussion, Klaus Michael Kaiser, who had asked if we could give 3 hints for building traffic for a completely new project. And I think Lukasz was giving out hints in the chat. I think he said inlinks, optimization of page speed, and content via gap.
Yes, so I just wanted to explain content via gap, which means I'm using very often SEMrush. However, the methodology, we designed this methodology independently in HomeAway around 2009, 2010 when I was working there, and we designed a software which was called Lunik, because it was Lukasz and Nicholas, so Lunik. And it was simply like to take competitors and see where they are ranking and we are not. And especially when you are able to find right now in SEMrush, I think the SEMrush, sorry, it's SEMrush, not SEMrush. We need to find what are the websites that are from our industry, and there is like 3 or 4 of them ideally, and there is set of similar keywords that these guys are ranking simultaneously and we are not. Then this is a strong signal that potentially we should bring this topic into our content strategy. So that's finding visibility through gap. And yeah, in a nutshell, that would be a completely new way to bring quickly traffic to the project.
We have another question on implementing hreflang tags on a regional basis. For example, this person has a domain with 6 subdomains in 6 different cities and 6 different countries throughout Europe. They're all in English, but the content is more or less the same. The management doesn't want to get rid of the subdomains, and translating them would take a lot of time. So the only way that they see out is to add an hreflang tag based on the country. Does this seem like a reasonable answer?
Well, it depends on whether, here I go, it depends, right?
Yeah.
What you have to consider is if there aren't unique locations, I mean, if it's all locations within one country, then an hreflang tag isn't going to help you. But if it's like throughout Europe and you've got, you know, Belgium and Switzerland and, you know, all of these countries and the UK, and they all speak English and the content is in English, then you can use the hreflang tag with the location and then EN. But there's not any opportunity if it's within the same country.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think when you say it depends, that also goes back to the whole question of data, where it depends on so many other variables that you want to make sure that you're taking all of those into account, not just SEO related data variables, but actual, how are you implemented in that country? Do you have a physical location? What is the value brought in from having a content in that location? So do you want it to stand out in the SERPs?
Yeah, and if you want the subdomains to go away and you're getting pushback from the business side of things, see if you can make a case for like the amount of time that it takes to maintain those sites, or the cost of the hosting, or the cost of the servers, or like, are you actually getting any traffic to those subdomains? Like, see what kind of business case you can make, because it may be that like there's really no good reason to keep all of those subdomains, Or you may dig in and the data shows you something completely different and you go, oh, look at that. We actually do get a ton of traffic for these particular subdomains.
In which case you might want to push back on management to get the resources you need to translate it.
Right.
Lukasz, did you have something to add in there?
No, I think I like the reaction when Jenny, you said it depends and you started laughing. This is common. This is for whoever our attendees don't have ever heard about that. Is a common joke in SEO that the best answer is it depends.
Always depends.
And it's the same in Polish language. It's the same in English. I think I love this is one of these many reasons why I love SEO. That it's a lifestyle more than a job, and yeah. So I just wanted to give this caveat.
I think I need to learn how to say it depends in like 6 different languages.
That should be a requirement for SEO. We have another question. Do ratings count more on Google or an external platform? Let's see if I can understand this. Collecting pages like Proven Export or some other aggregator. I would say if you're trying to rank on Google, they always count more on Google.
Ratings, do you think maybe they're referring to reviews?
Maybe.
I think it's about reviews, yeah. Google My Business versus other platforms, like Trustpilot.
So yeah, if you have the capability to get Google My Business reviews, that's definitely an area to focus on. Not to the exclusion of others, because some people are still going to use like a Yelp or some other type of open table, something like that uses their own reviews, and that's thinking more of like consumer-oriented businesses. There are also Consumer Reports and Forrester Wave and all these kinds of things on the B2B side. But certainly, I think that if you have the opportunity to have a Google My Business listing for a local site and you can get reviews on that, then that would be the place to focus in terms of improving Google reviews. But what I'm trying to say, not eloquently at all, is that Google is not the only game in town. So consider where you need to be positioned well, aside from Google as well.
And I think that's especially valid if you're looking at markets outside of, say, Europe and the United States. I know, Naguib, when we've talked before, you've mentioned different platforms where people's optimization have more of an impact. I think you've talked about Amazon even before as a place for e-commerce.
Yeah, correct. I would just say as a rule of thumb, like always try, we are SEOs, right? So search engine optimization. So optimize for the probabilities, not for the possibilities. There is so many platforms that you can optimize, but exactly what Jenny said, like think about the end users. Where is the end user? You might not need a website. You might just need like an online presence on Google My Business. So then Google My Business profile is more important for you than anything else. So always optimize for the probabilities. So if you have this rule in mind, you should be on the right track.
Thank you very much for that. All 3 of you, I had a great time talking to you today. I learned a lot. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And thank you to all of the participants who were here with us with OnCrawl and with Don't Panic. If you haven't checked out the chat, make sure you copy and save it right now before we end this webinar, because there are so many great links and good advice in there. Hope to see you soon. If you've missed us now, there'll be a replay later for you to check this out again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And
thank you
for having us.
Thanks a lot.